Hey there guys, Aldershot here, and today we're going to do an impression video on Transistor, developed by Supergiant Games and currently on sale on Steam for the regular price of $20. Now for those who don't know, Transistor is Supergiant Games' second game, the first one being Bastion, which was critically acclaimed and has garnered quite a bit of a fan following. It's definitely one of those top-grade indie games that you really must play. It's one of my personal favorites. So a lot of people, including myself, was really looking forward to Transistor. Alright. Now, I normally do these introduction bits in the game's opening menu, but Transistor is a little bit different in that it doesn't have an opening menu at all. It kind of just throws you into the game. I'm kind of in the game now. Just to be perfectly honest, I have actually finished the game once. I'm in my second playthrough, so this is technically Game Plus. Alright. Now, like Bastion, as you can see, it is a top-down isometric perspective. It does feature beautifully hand-drawn illustrations and animations and all that sort of stuff, but Transistor is a little bit different from Bastion in a lot of different ways. Alright, so we'll explore some of that as we kind of play through the game. Now, first thing, in Bastion you have a narrator that narrates everything that you're doing. In this game,
seriously, I hate
you have a sword that commentates on everything that you're doing. Now, Supergiant Games said that they're not going to bring the narrator back. Instead, they got the sword. So yeah, I don't mind it personally. The voice work is wonderfully done. So again, it's actually kind of welcome, to be honest. They hire a good voice actor to do the commentary from the sword. But anyways, we're in a combat scenario now, and this is where Transistor really kind of separates itself from Bastion. Even though it is a top-down RPG with, you know, similar sort of illustration styles, in Bastion, it plays almost like Diablo in that it's more of an action RPG, but with almost dual stick mechanics thrown in. In Transistor, what happens is you get thrown into this kind of pause menu, and you can kind of plan out your attacks, plan where you're going to move, and what attacks will follow up. So I'm going to throw a few AoE spark attacks here. Hopefully that'll take care of some of these enemies here. We're going to try, you know what, we're going to go back. You can actually erase your planned moves and start over. We're going to charm this one person to bring them on our side. That is a skill that you can get. Charm, essentially. Because I think they might teleport away, but let's see what happens. Alright, yeah, we did manage to get one charmed, which is useful. But as you can see, when you get into a combat scenario, you can freeze time, decide on a bunch of actions and maneuvers and all that sort of stuff, and kind of plan out your attacks, and everything happens within a split second when you release your pause menu, essentially. Now it does throw in some real-time mechanics as well. All the enemies can only attack in real time. They can't freeze your time or anything like that. And also, you can actually throw attacks in real time as well, but that'll come with its own kind of dangers as well. We're going to just plan out this sequence here. As you can see, you can just plan out your attack sequences and watch it unfold within a blink of an eye. When you do use this mechanic, it will give you an obvious strategic advantage as you're taking multiple actions within a split second. Alright, I'll show you an example. You can throw an attack in real time, then freeze it. Now there is some benefits to this because you have an attack that's occurring right now, but it didn't cost you your time meter. And when you do plan out your attack, each movement, each attack that you decide on and all that sort of stuff, that does require a bit of your time bar. So you are limited in that fashion. You can't just, you know, plan out an incredibly long attack sequence to destroy everything. Obviously the game's going to be balanced against that. So that's how it's going to kind of meld some real-time attacks as well, which is definitely interesting. This meld of real-time and turn-based strategy certainly presents some interesting strategies that the player can kind of take advantage of and kind of explore, because I haven't really seen this sort of you know, battle mechanic from other games before, at least not in this way, and this is very, very much like Supergiant and their design philosophy. Now in Bastion you have something that you would be familiar with. It has a kind of a top-down isometric ARPG perspective that you've grown accustomed through playing like Diablo or Path of Exile and games like that. But the way you actually use your attacks is almost like dual stick shooters, in that one direction chooses the direction that you're going to be attacking, one actually launches your attack. So it's kind of interesting in that they meld familiar mechanics into something new, and they very much done that for Transistor as well, I feel. So as you can see, this is kind of a meld between real-time strategy and more turn-based strategy. Now when you kill enemies, they do spawn these silver cells, and if you don't kill them or collect them in time, they will spawn new enemies, and that will obviously that can potentially be problematic for obvious reasons. So we are going to try and clean up some of this mess here. So as you can see, you can plan out your movements as well as your attacks. And when you release it, it all kind of happens in a split second. This is a very, very, very enjoyable combat system they got going on here. It's a nice meld of two things that are very familiar to general gamers, but at the same time it combines into something a little bit more unique, something that you might not have experienced before. Now do keep in mind I have the difficulty turned up a little bit through what they call limiters. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get an opportunity. And they've also handled, I should also mention that they've handled the skill system pretty uniquely as well. Alright, well this is an access point. This is a perfect time to kind of talk about the difficulty modifiers and the skill system. So let's kind of talk about the difficulty modifiers a little bit. Now for those who have played Bastion, this might sound familiar. In Bastion there was an idol system where you can choose different idols, and they'll add additional negative effects to your game, making the game harder, but will reward you with more XP per kill. And in Transistor, that sort of idea, that sort of mechanic has returned in the form of limiters. Same thing as Bastion, you can choose which limiter to turn on. It'll add a negative effect to your game. For example, efficiency. This will cause mobs to strike twice as hard. So basically double DPS for the enemy. But you will get a 4% experience bonus for turning it on. Or, for example, this one here, Abundance, the enemy or process, they call the enemy process, will sometimes spawn twin cells when terminated. So you will have to collect twice as much of those white cells to prevent them from spawning new enemies. And that will give you a benefit of 2% in your XP gain. And obviously you have a bunch of them. You can choose what ones to turn on, which ones do not turn on, to make it a little bit easier for yourself. And it's handled in an interesting way in that it's not just going to beef up enemies or make you weaker. They've done some interesting things as well, just like Bastion. For example, this one here, Resilience. This will give a shield to the cells that the enemies will spawn, basically having you to do two things to collect the two-step process to collect those cells instead of just walking over to them. Or this one, which is very interesting. I don't have it on right now for the sake of this impression video, but it's called Permanence, which is kind of interesting. What it does basically is when you customize your skills, when you unequip the skill, that will cause it to overload. And when it overloads, you can't use that skill until you find 2 more checkpoints essentially. And that will add additional 4% to your XP gain. So they've definitely done something interesting with difficulty scaling and difficulty modifiers. Again, just like Supergiant fashion, even their difficulty slider is very unique, but based on a mechanic that's very familiar with gamers. So again, that's very, very Supergiant of Transistor to do that. Now, anyways, let's talk about the skills a little bit and how they kind of work. And again, this skill tree, much like the rest of this game, is very unique and very interesting, but also familiar at the same time. Basically, all these nodes that you're looking at, there are different skills, and each skill will do its own thing when you equip them. They will either attack with an AoE, with a penetrating attack, or some sort of chaining attack, or just a plain efficient hit, a single strike. You'll have a different variety of different skills. They can turn you invisible, they can summon pets for you, they can increase your damage, they can drop essentially grenades or mines. So obviously each skill will do different things. Now you can equip them as active skills, and again they will do different things for you, but you can also equip each one of these as passive skill nodes as well. So you equip them to active skills and that will beef it up passively. For example, let's take Purge, for example. If I use it as an active skill, I will spawn a seeking parasite that will dismantle the target from within. Basically, it's a homing missile that will do a dot attack if I use it as an active skill. Now, if I use it as a passive skill to beef up an active skill, it will apply corruption effect to most functions. So right now, I'm actually using it with my charm. So when I charm enemies, this in combination with this will also add a dot effect on the enemy while it's charmed. So each skill can be used either as a passive skill or an active skill, or they can also be used as a character buff as well. So you can each skill will actually serve three purposes: either an active skill, a passive skill, or a character buff. So for example, I have Void equipped it as my character buff skill, and that will allow all my skills to do a bit more damage. But back to Purge, I'm using this. If I was to use it as a passive skill on my character, I will automatically retaliate whenever I'm hit. So basically a free counter attack. So again, much like Supergiant fashion, even the skill system is done sort of uniquely, but in a way that's familiar with gamers as well. If you look down here, you can see what skills I have equipped. I won't go into it because this isn't a build video, this is an impression video, but I do like what they're doing here. Since each skill node function as three purposes rather than just one or even just two, it offers a lot of customization and experimentation potential, which is pretty interesting. And the game does incentivize you to kind of experiment a little bit as well. Alright, now as you play through the game, you will find these little mobile devices, and they'll tell you little story bits and all that stuff. I'm not sure if I touched on that in this video yet, but if I haven't, there you go. So yeah, that's basically how the skills and the difficulty slider works, and I've kind of talked about the combat mechanics, so I want to talk about the visuals and the sound a little bit, the art assets essentially. I think it's going to be pretty obvious that this is a good looking game, right? Come on. It's hard to argue this fact. This is a very, very good looking game. All the character sprites and backgrounds are wonderfully detailed. They are cartoony, but they didn't use that as a crutch. Like a lot of games that go with the cartoony style, they tend to overextend their simplicity, and it tends to look a little bit bland, and they kind of look like just flash cartoons essentially. But the way that they handle this is more from a digital painting style. Everything, even though it's cartoony, it's very, very well detailed. You can see shading, you can see the stroke of the artist's brush and all that sort of stuff. It is wonderfully rendered. And it's really just a lot of attention to detail that makes this game look so gorgeous. You know, even down to these little blocks here. They have these little tiny lines that separate themselves to break it up from the shape and all that stuff. You know, these little lines, they actually add a lot to the aesthetics. You know, like in all the flooring, the walls, everything is wonderfully detailed. Even though it looks kind of simple because of the way the color scheme is set up, if you look closely, all the illustrations, all the background bits, they're all heavily detailed, and you can see there's a lot of love and a lot of care taken by the artists to produce this kind of product. Supergiant games really shouldn't surprise people that it looks good. Whenever I do talk about art in video games, I definitely bring them up. I bring up Bastion, and right now I bring up Transistor as an example as art in video games. So I think it goes without saying. Excuse me one second. throat was getting a little dry. I think it goes without saying that Transistor is a gorgeous looking game. You know, it's going to be hard to argue that fact. And it features an amazing soundtrack as well. The composer is Darren Korb. He also did the music for Bastion, and that is also wonderful as well. But as far as art and creativity goes, Transistor got it in the bag, you know. All of Supergiant Games got it in the bag. They do amazing work as far as being creative and unique in their own rights. The visuals in their games are always gorgeous, and you can see that in the quality of Transistor. And their sound quality is always amazing as well. Very, very high quality audio, amazingly composed music, and all that sort of stuff. So there you go, it's amazing looking. That's what I'm trying to get at. I think it goes without saying. Now, I've kind of gushed about Transistor quite a bit in this video, talked a lot about the good aspects of the game. There is some drawbacks to Transistor. It's not all fun and games, not all candy and rainbows or anything like that. Now, like I mentioned, I did finish this game. You do keep in mind that this game is actually kind of short. Alright. I finished this game within 4 to 6 hours, I think, give or take. And you're really, really fast, you can probably do it in 3 hours. So it is a little bit short, and there's not a lot of incentive to bring you back into the game either. There's no time attack mode, there's no multiplayer, there's no raid mode or anything of that sort. When you finish the game, it just throws you right into Game Plus mode, except you have all your skills and progress that you've accumulated through playthrough 1, and that's basically it. You're just going to be playing through the story all over again. Alright. So again, it is a little bit light on feature and is a little bit light in length as well. So if you are a feature or length centric kind of gamer, Transistor might not be your game, unfortunately. But you do have to keep in mind the $20 that you're going to be paying for this game, and at least at full price, you're not paying for the amounts of game you're getting. Rather, you're paying for the quality of experience. Even though it's rather short in comparison to other games, let's say GTA for example, the quality of material that you're getting in those short few hours are impressive. And it's really hard to deny that. I mean, the game mechanics are unique, yet familiar, and wonderfully tuned and balanced as well. So we're going to get a little bit of cutscene here, but anyways, and you know, the artwork and the soundtrack and the voiceover work, the story itself is all wonderfully crafted. You know, like the way I like to look at it is GTA, you know, Saints Row or Watch Dogs or any of these kind of long games, or even Dark Souls or something like that. You know, you're getting a buffet for your price. You know, you're getting a lot of food, and the food could be good. It can be very, very good, but they are buffet food. Transistor is what I like to compare to that fine, really, really expensive restaurant that you see downtown. You know, that you can never afford. The food that you're going to get, you're not going to get a lot of it, but it's something worth remembering. The food that you are going to get, that little tiny bit of food that you're paying so much money for, is going to be memorable. It's something worth talking about. It's something worth referring to time and time again because it was so delicious, even though you never had any more than 1 or 2 bites of it. So that's the way I kind of like to compare games from Supergiant. They're not long games. Transistor is definitely one of them. It's not a long game. It's not feature heavy. But the quality of the content you're getting is impressive. It's, you know, it's not a buffet. It's not a buffet game. It's a fine game. It's fine cuisine for gamers. I know it sounds a little pretentious, but at the same time, it's kind of true. You know, you're paying for quality of content, not the amount of content in this kind of situation. So you do have to keep that in mind. And I do believe if you do invest your time and money into Transistor, you will come out satisfied. I absolutely adore this game. I really like it. I think it is obvious from, you know, the way I'm speaking about it. But, you know, you do have to keep in mind it is a bit light on content. Well, that's about it. That's pretty much everything I want to say about the game. It is gorgeous. The mechanics are unique, yet easy to understand and familiar to gamers. And it is a super giant game, so you can expect top-grade stuff. And that's basically it. If you found this informative, helpful, or just enjoyable in any way, show me some love. Like, share, fave, and comment. But most importantly, you haven't already, help me grow, feed me my vegetables, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. All the shoutouts.